Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session for the XR Summit. My name is Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR today, and we're hosting the Future of XR. So for this particular session, we have on Amelia Kallman, futurist, author, speaker, and host of the XR Star podcast. And we also have on Andrea Bravo, PhD. She is an AR VR specialist and consultant, data visualization expert for the Technical University of Denmark, and also with collaboration with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So thanks so much for coming on today. I really appreciate both of you doing so. And let's get started with our session. So what we'll talk about first. First question, I'd like to ask you some of the trends that you're noticing in XR. What are some of the things that you're seeing across the industry, either from a conceptual or a technical point of view? And which technologies are reshaping the market?
So that's a huge question. But one of the things that I have always been interested in, and it's really been cool to watch it progress, is around AR and geolocation and geopinning. So being able to map the physical world so we can pin an augmented reality experience to our natural environment. And there's been companies, I know Microsoft is working with Niantic to do this, and then you also have Meta doing this, which really indicates that this is going to be a huge new industry. And what we're essentially talking about is physical property with digital property on top of it and everything that comes with that. So you can imagine you have an office space and you have its physical facade, and then you'll have a digital facade on top of that, and that can reflect the seasons or your latest project, and it can even be gamified, so people walking down the street can have an interactive experience, and maybe it even leads them into your metaverse. And there will also be opportunities for people to lease this space and to rent this space and to make money off of this space. They'll also have to be regulated or policed as well. So there's a whole new industry that's going to emerge around this. And I think that also just kind of leads into the how valuable 3D models and 3D environments are. And I'm seeing a huge emergence around the gaming industry, entertainment industry, the industrial industry, the enterprise metaverse industries starting to recognize that everyone's going to need these 3D models and these 3D environments. And I think there's going to be a bit of a merge and blurring of the lines between this. And I can also see, a lot of people are trying to buy up smaller companies to increase their libraries that can then these places can be licensed or leased or customized for other purposes. So that's one that I'm really interested in.
What about you, Andrea? What do you think about it?
Yeah, right. So building up on what Amelia said, I'm very closely looking at the augmented reality space, which is what she was just saying. You overlay content in the physical space. So in a way that you have data that is overlaid in our current physical locations. Now we can see that this space is going to be developed very fast in a few years, and it's heading to consumer market because one of the big players, such as Magic Leap, such as Google, such as Meta, are right now heading to they're in the research doing some projects. For example, Google has initiated some testing of AR prototypes that indicates that soon they're going to release soon in some years eventually. I don't have the knowledge specific for these, but they're working on these right now because they're initiating the testing in real life locations beyond the lab. So now it's the moment, for example, for Meta also, they're testing with Project Area, a research device. So basically glasses to see how do we collect data in the space, to see also how to build hardware and software that we will be able to use on our space in our locations. So it's very interesting to see all these big players that are having right now projects that they're releasing into the world, because these are clear indicators that their products are coming soon into the market. And this is more from the hardware side. But what I find very interesting is how the XR community is gathering right now to talk more about how to foster an inclusive, a safe, an ethical, and also an interoperable metaverse. And I think this is very important to consider right now because it's beyond building technology. It's also about the human implications, the societal implications of all this technology. What will they bring us? Because definitely they will change the way that we interact with the world as mobiles have done. We didn't interact with our environment in the same way before having a mobile telephone that now tells you where to go with Google Maps, that now tell you also a lot of information through apps. So with the XR ecosystem, it will be even more because it will be built upon Web 2.0 that we know, but it will increase this experiential side. There's also emotional side, and of course, there will be increased data tracking, which is also an aspect to watch very closely. And now, one of the most important things here is to see how can we foster good practices in order to build a metaverse that is safe and also promotes human well-being.
I wanted to actually pinpoint one of those things that you mentioned there. You speak about ethics, and ethics is going to be one of the main driving forces for the industry itself because there are so many different devices, no interoperability, or limited interoperability at the moment. So, are there any specific organizations that either of you are following that are working in this space to actually build an interoperable, secure metaverse? Amelia, would you like to start off with that one?
Yeah, sure. I just want to start by saying I think the conversations, the fact that they're happening and people are recognizing that they need to happen is very positive because what we're talking about are very powerful technologies, and we know that these have implications. And while they offer great opportunities, they also offer significant risk. And we're seeing this in things like brain development. Technology has an impact on our brain. And so, the kids who have grown up with smartphones and tablets, their brains work differently from, kids who, didn't have the internet growing up. And now we're looking at the next generation. Some people are even calling it generation metaverse, So what is it going to be like for them? So I think there's issues that we need to look at around long-term use of these technologies, how it does impact us. I think another concern that we don't talk enough about is around the footprint of these technologies. And I work with a lot of corporate clients who have an idea that they're going to be carbon neutral by 2025 or 2030. But as soon as we start introducing Web3 and blockchain and crypto and NFTs, that really starts to diminish big time. And we need to come up with some new solutions because we can't afford to sacrifice our natural worlds for our digital worlds, right? And then I guess the biggest kind of concern that I have personally is that these technologies have the potential to create bigger inequality between the people who have access to these technologies, access to internet, to 5G, et cetera, and the people who don't. I think on the flip side, these technologies have the opportunity to make us more equal because inside metaverse spaces, you don't have age, you don't have gender, you don't have some of these things that trigger biases between us. And with things like Meta's No Language Left Behind, doing instant translation, so you can be talking to someone from the other side of the world in real time as if you're talking to your neighbor. So it has the potential to go either way, and we have a real responsibility today to make sure we're putting in the right measures and looking at all these possibilities now so that we are creating the best possible future.
Yeah, good observations. Andrea, have you seen any that you particularly follow?
Yeah, so right now it's very interesting because all is happening, right now in the sense, for example, Metaverse Standard Forums, which is a worldwide organization that just appeared in June. basically with the leading institutions that are part, are actors, builders of technology, also organizations. And what they want to foster are interoperability standards. So I'm watching closely to see what they are going to bring, because one aspect that they want to promote it's an open metaverse, which is very interesting because we know that we will have not one metaverse but several. So a metaverse that has several, in the sense that there will be companies that, of course, they will have their proprietary software. Now, how to integrate these into a wider ecosystem? And this is the question. So many experts are advocating for blockchain, so decentralized, a decentralized platform. Now, it's very interesting to look at how blockchain can foster this. Now, also, the interesting thing, it's a bit of a paradox, because who will regulate blockchain? It's decentralized, it's worldwide. Are there worldwide regulations to date? Usually they're national. In Europe, we have, for example, GDPR that goes across the European Union. But is there then going to be an agreement from all the countries to regulate blockchain in a certain way? So these are the things that are coming that are very interesting to see, and that it's not only for something that applies to the metaverse, but that will apply a shift in the way we operate and we think at a global scale, because we will be all part of this decentralization, which at some point, I guess, will need also some regulations.
And those regulations are being widely discussed amongst many different types of organizations, like the XR Association from Washington, D.C. You have XR for Europe. I think if I'm not mistaken, it's based in Belgium. And then we also have many other ones. China's got its own, and we're just going to continue to see more as time develops. So moving on to the third question that I'd like to ask you. We speak about these different kinds of experiences that people can have when they are using these VR headsets. Would you like to share any of your memorable experiences that you've seen with XR and how it's actually impacted the lives of other people?
Well, there was one just in the news this week where neurosurgeons in London were able to train neurosurgeons in Rio to separate the brains of two conjoined twins. And that is so amazing, using 3D models, using training, being able to practice this really vital operation over and over again. And I'm happy to say that the twins are doing well. So that's really exciting. But then I guess bringing it closer to enterprise, a lot of my clients are really interested in how we can create a workspace culture when we have a hybrid working environment. We have people working remotely, people working across geographic locations all around the world, and being able to come to a common space that is created to be theirs. So it's been designed by their designers, it looks and feels like theirs, to have experiences, to play games, to hang out, to have their Friday drinks together, and then to collaborate and to use it for training purposes, and also to be immersed inside new spaces, new opportunities, experience new products, and accelerate all those kind of processes. So there's some examples. I know Axel Springer, which is a publishing house, have used it to bring their teams closer together. There's an insurance company called Hub that meets their new customers now inside Horizon Workspace, which is kind of cool. And then in the Web3 metaverse spaces like Decentraland, we have companies like JP Morgan and PwC offering consultancies, and essentially they're going to where their future customers are, and they're offering consultancy on things like Web3 and IP in Web3 and cryptocurrencies, so that the people who are using these, when they have questions, they know who to go to. And then I guess my favorite one that I'll close on is the Barbados Embassy having a space in Decentraland. Yeah. And I think the idea there is that you can go and experience the beautiful sunsets and the beautiful people and the music and the vibes. And then maybe in your real life, when it's time to go on holiday, you'll think, I'm going to go to Barbados.
On the holiday season in August. But yeah, Andrea, same question for you. I'd like to know.
Yeah, sure. So, in my case, I would just like to build on, for example, on the corporate space and beyond thinking about big events. I like to think about how can XR incrementally help us in our everyday life, in our everyday work. Instead of thinking of something wow, which of course there are things that are wow, like the twin surgery that Amelia just mentioned. But let's see how for each of us it can help us in our everyday work. And one case that I worked with a company was, for example, how could they boost their presentations with XR? So we all do presentations in PowerPoint usually. Some people don't use a PowerPoint, although today it's mostly the way to go. Now, how in a presentation you can boost it just with some VR, some AR content. What we did was with AR. And what was very interesting to see is that first, you don't need to change your method of working. What works for you is perfect. Now, let's see how can you boost it with XR and knowing, of course, what are the affordances, the advantages of this technology, and how can you implement these into your work. I think this is the thing that what matters the most today. It's beyond thinking what I can do in 10 years, what I can do today, because the software and the technology is available today. Now, most corporations need a bit of training, familiarization with the technology, with what can we do with it. But the good thing is to start now practicing, start using it and seeing, for example, in this case, okay, what they did usually a presentation with their documents that at the end, they're boosted some numbers, some data with augmented reality. And what was very interesting to see is that instead of faster decisions, which were the expectations, or for example, optimizing the meeting, it actually led to new conversations. One may ask, is it about the technology? Is it about it's new? So of course, these are questions that are going to come in because still we are in a moment of early adoption. But what is interesting to see is, okay, these rose actually new questions. These brought another type of creativity, another type of collaboration. And this is what is interesting now with XR to see how these small things that are usually cognitive change our way of working and allow us to have other spaces of collaboration that are more embodied and that are less in a certain way, I could say flat, because we're seeing all the time content on a flat screen. We're used to these, but our experience in the world is embodied, is in 3 dimensions. And definitely when you have content that is in 3 dimensions that allows you to interact also in this 3 dimensional space, there is a shift in the cognitive processes. And this is what is interesting to see and to start to experiment as per today.
Guess we have the lightning round. We're going to ask one question to Amelia and then one question to Andrea, and we'll see what kind of responses they can give to these. So for you, Amelia, I want to ask you the question about different issues with cybersecurity. Now, we've spoken about this in a recent article, but I wanted to ask you about an updated version of that. What kinds of cybersecurity risk or issues or concerns do you think there are when considering XR nowadays, because there's no antivirus program for these types of devices? And what kind of things do you expect?
Yes, it's a great question. Well, I think the kind of basic thing to understand is that the level of data that we produce is going to expand exponentially. And that also means that we expand entry points for potential hackers or things to happen. So that is definitely something we have to be aware of and think about. And the kind of data that we are producing is going to be a lot more intimate and a lot more personal. So as soon as we start putting glasses on, we're allowing companies to actually see through our eyes, and they'll be able to pick up on subtle reactions and instincts that we might have. And this will allow them to get to know us better than we know ourselves, and then be able to use that data to manipulate us into spending more time on certain sites, to capture our attention, or to buy things or to give money to certain things. So we might start to hear voices that remind us of our mother or our best friend, and we'll have these emotional buttons that companies can start to push. So there's a potential here for blockchain and NFTs to kind of come in and save the day when it comes to data privacy and data security. But there's still quite a lot of issues to be solved around this, because we know that it is as well hackable. And then there's the question, while it boasts being transparent, do we really want everything to be transparent? Do we, or is that necessarily a good thing? And then when things start to go wrong, when it's in a decentralized Web3 as opposed to a centralized Web2, who do you go to? Who is held responsible? So for instance, you have the case right now where Hermes is upset because an artist has produced these Meta Birkin bags and is selling them for $4,000, real money, in the metaverse as NFTs. And Hermes is saying that's our IP. And the artist is saying this is art. When Andy Warhol sold all those prints of the Campbell's soup ads, that wasn't IP infringement, that was art, and that's what this is. So what happens there is going to be really, really interesting to see, and I think there is potential for NFTs to come in and offer us new ways to protect ourselves, but we again are just at the very beginning of that.
Great wrap up of that, definitely. And so we'll go over to you, Andrea. The question that I'd like to ask for you, as you are a data visualization, expert, I wanted to see from that particular point of view. We noticed that there are new gaming engines coming out. Epic Games, Unity have made updates to their engines. And what kind of game engine technologies do you think are being used to allow people to interact better with their XR content?
Right. So, if we switch then to visualization, basically visualizations are very interesting because they create this bridge between quantitative measure and also human intuition. So in one picture, actually, we understand the panorama of what is happening to our data, and it's in a very intuitive way. So that's why we like visualizations. For example, when there was this COVID, we just saw over and over the flattening curve. And this was something that we were only able to see through a data visualization. Now, with regards to XR, there are several companies that are doing right now data visualization. Most of them are startups working in this space. And beyond the game engine, saying Unreal, saying Unity, of course, these companies work based on those platforms, but they have proprietary software. So you should buy a license in order to work with them. Now, beyond talking about them, what I like to say is actually what it brings, data visualization in AR or in VR. So what we were telling, a more embodied experience. Embodied, so basically because you are living. Google calls these story living. So you enter an environment where you are the actor and you have, for example, data in front of you. So in VR, you are, for example, inside of a data set. So why would I like to be inside of a data set? For example, if you want to explore data, if you're in a complex data set, it may be more helpful to see and to estimate distance between data points. So this is a concrete case. It also enables, if it's, for example, augmented reality, to collaborate with somebody else while you're able to see that person and to have the data in front of you. So basically data gets experiential. So we're living it. It's more something that we also, at some parts, it increases also the engagement. And it can also be used to tell stories and in order to, so data storytelling, that is basically when you have insights and you want to tell a story. And you can also use it to focus the attention on certain elements. So what do I mean with this? So for example, you have some type of data visualization, and you can include an animation, you can include some type of interaction with it so that the person that is working with you at this moment has a clear, visualization of what you're working with. Now, downsides, of course, it's invasive. You need to wear a headset, and for this, we need to get familiar on it. You usually need some training. That's also, but with all technologies, we experience this. And one thing that I would like to bring forward today, still we have distractions from the content because the technology is very new. What do I mean with this? Sometimes people focus more on the fact that I'm watching a data visualization in VR or AR on the technology versus on the data itself. So this is something that needs to be taken into account before putting a data visualization out there or working with it for the first time. Depending on the context, on the situation, maybe using traditional tools is perfectly okay. But my take on this, it's if you're working with data today, start eventually to explore the possibilities that are there out for data exploration. That's very interesting for complex data sets. There are some companies specializing in that, and for data storytelling, because the future is experiential, and that's what augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality is bringing out there, and what these platforms will enable for also.
Great observations, and thanks so much for those insights as well. So that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for coming out and joining us for this XR Summit session. Once again, my name is Cureton, Senior Journalist for XR Today, and we have had on Amelia Kallman, Futurist, author, speaker, and host of the XR Star podcast, as well as Andrea Bravo, PhD. She is an AR/VR specialist and consultant, as well as data visualization expert. So thanks again, and if you'd like to follow the updates on the internet, please join social media conversations at the Big XR Update hashtag. Thanks so much for coming out today, and hope you had a great time. Bye now.